We knew when my wife was 6 months pregnant that we were having a boy, and we had a baby shower and bought all the items needed for expecting parents. We already had a 5-year-old son, so we could use some of his things. When she went into labor, I was there by her side. It wasn't a first for me because I was there 5 years ago. Looking back as our 5-year-old got older, I remember having doubts whether he was mine when he started growing up because he looked nothing like me. But when he was born, I was the happiest I had been in my entire life. I had married my best friend. I am 29 and she is 27. We quickly became best friends when we met at a park. We had been together for 5 years. She convinced as soon as we became intimate, so I didn't suspect that she was cheating. We met each other's family and she became close with my siblings. We married shortly after our son was born. I started having doubts when he was getting older. He did not look like my child. The more he started to grow, the more I realized just how different he looked compared to what I expected a child of mine to look like. I had nieces and nephews, and so did my wife, and I spent time with them. My son didn't even come close to looking like anyone on my side of the family. The shape of his face was different from what I would expect my side and my wife's sides of the family to look like. It wasn't so obvious to cause me to panic or be paranoid enough to let that alone drive me. It was my 304 of a wife that really set my alarm bells ringing. Whenever she went out, she never went to where she said she did. She would have huge holes in her schedule she could never explain to me. For example, one weekday, she told me she was coming home from work late because she had to visit her friends in the hospital. Normally, my wife's work schedule allows her to relieve the baby sister, but because she told me she was visiting a friend at the hospital, I had to leave work early to relieve the babysitter. As I was watching the baby, I scrolled through Facebook to find a friend she claimed she was visiting at the hospital. To my surprise, the friend she told me she was visiting posted a picture a few minutes ago, as she was on vacation with her family. When my wife came back home, I confronted her about it, and she told me that it was an old photo. By the way she reacted, I suspected that she was telling a lie, so I did the needful by following up with the friend. I sent a message to the friend wishing her a speedy recovery, and she responded with a huge explanation of how she was sick, suspecting foul play. I went to her boyfriend's Facebook and looked him up as well. Turns out that he was posting about the vacation as well, which clearly shows that my wife went out of her way to convince her friend to lie to me. I could go on and on with several similar instances. She refused to allow me to interact with anyone from her workplace, and I suspected she was cheating when a close friend of hers texted me accusing her of flirting with her boyfriend. At the time, I confronted her, and she claimed that she had a falling out and she is trying to destroy her marriage. I took it with a grain of salt and never completely believed her. At some point, it all started catching up to her soon after we got married. Still, though, I loved her like a fool. She told me up and down how much she loved me. Whenever her lies caught up with her, when I caught her in her web of lies, she would try to guilt me by saying that I was too controlling, judgmental, and I was smothering her. So when she got pregnant, I thought it would be a fresh start. I thought we would hit the reset button. Here I was in the labor room, waiting for what I thought was my second biological son, comforting my so-called wife in the presence of the medical staff who were preparing for the impending delivery. She was in so much pain, saying that it was my fault that she was going through all this pain. As I stood there by her side, holding her hand tightly, offering words of encouragement and reassurance, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. I can remember every second of that moment because it marked the most traumatic experience of my life, more than the birth of our 5-year-old son. As for the contractions, intense feet, and the medical team guided her through the stage of labor, as they coached her on the breathing techniques and provided support and comfort throughout the process. I was still by her side, holding her hand. I wished that I could take on the pain she was feeling at the time. As the medical team prepared for the final stage of delivery, I was ready to welcome another son into the world. Finally, the moment arrived, still by her side, which lessened the combination of moans of anticipation and love. I heard the baby cry before I saw him, and when I finally saw him, I was a bit confused because he looked like a mixed baby. All the medical staff, except for the doctor, acted like everything was normal. If it wasn't for the look of the doctor gave me, I would have thought that I was dreaming. The doctor gave me this look as if to confirm what my race was before he recomposed himself. It was glaringly obvious the race of the baby's father. At this moment, it felt like my soul left my body, as if I was frozen, as everyone acted like my wife had just given birth to a mixed baby. I could feel the grip of her fingers around my palm getting tighter and tighter as I felt my world closing in on me. It wasn't until after the medical team left the room that I regained control of myself. I wanted to confront her, but she was too tired and feeling sleepy. I walked out of the hospital and never came back. Her family helped her and the baby back to the house because I refused to help her. And I wasn't hanging around to sign the birth certificate. My side of the family thinks that I'm a terrible person, failing to mention that she was the one that cheated. Soon after, I did a DNA test on my 5-year-old son. The day I received those test results was the day I filed for separation from my shamed marriage. She was still recovering from childbirth when I served her divorce papers. My mom and sister were staying with us because they had helped her out of the hospital, and they were present when I served her the divorce papers. They became combative when I served her, calling me a deadbeat and irresponsible father. The three of them followed me around the house, getting in my face, trying to force me to get violent. I knew their plans were to entice me to get violent so they can call the cops and use that against me during the divorce process. I didn't take the bait. Up until then, I had been a good father to her son. I was the best dad I could be for him. I loved him with all my heart and put more devotion than her into being the father he deserved. Now, though, when I see him, I am filled with disdain for the whole lot that I have been with for 5 years, and disdain for myself for not trusting my instincts. I have wasted 5 years of my life. Everything that I have worked for is gone, and the emotional toll is even worse. I have been told by multiple people that I am a monster for leaving my son like that. I basically left with a few clothes and stayed at an extended hotel. I would remain there until I found an apartment and move some of my things, but I will leave all my furniture with her. Moreover, she contributed some of it. I would rather she have it. I don't want anything from my old wife to remind me of her. Even when I was at the hotel and she didn't know where I was, she still tried multiple times to guilt me into coming back to her. She would have the 5-year-old call me at random hours of the night, crying and begging for his daddy to come back home, using all sorts of manipulative tactics to torture me, as if she hadn't done enough, and then turn around and tell me how much damage I am doing to the family. In every conversation that he is brought up, both online and off, I am braided and shamed, despite the fact that I am not the boy's biological father. I am his dad. While she continuously cheated on me throughout the marriage, I stopped being friends with most of our mutual friends because she used them to gang up against me. They called me a despicable person for abandoning the child like that, as though they would allow me to continue to be cuckolded, despite how difficult it was for my parents and siblings. They stood by me. They told me that they supported whatever decision I made, my parents especially, because they have bonded with her son and babysit for us sometimes. I understand how hard it is for them, but any moment with him reminds me of her betrayal and how much of a fool I was. I have sadly come to realize that in most parts, my feelings meant nothing to some of our closest friends and family members. They felt I should man up for a child that isn't mine. I understand that the boy is innocent, but so am I. The thought lies with his mother, but nobody seemed to be holding her accountable. All they think about is how I might abandon a son that the DNA already proved that he wasn't mine. I know that the man he called his father for his entire life just walked away, but I am expected to man up and act like everything is fine. Some friends and family tried to guilt me, saying that I never loved him or was always looking for a way out. It is hard to convey my emotion through writing words, but for them to be accusing me for allowing the rhetorical hate to fester towards my wife, to destroy the life of my 5-year-old son, makes me believe that they don't consider me as a person. Which part of the blame lies on her? Everyone is dealing with her with a kid's glove. Is anyone going to hold her accountable? I am supposed to be the man of a kid that isn't mine and just accept being a cuckold. Should I wait for her to have a third child and fourth? When does it end? And how about me? I am a human too. I have feelings too. I feel pain. I feel betrayal. I feel emasculation as well. Why should I put my own life and feelings aside? I was never the boy's father. I love him like one, and honestly, I still do, but I would come to hate and contempt him if I had to play that role, and I would hate myself for not standing up and taking my life back in my own hands. He is not my child, and even though he is innocent, he shouldn't be my problem. We all know who the thought lies. For those who say I should stay in her son's life and be his father, that's not realistically possible as we are getting a divorce. I'm getting a disestablishment of paternity. You seem to be forgetting that I have been cheated on, lied to, and used by a selfish, self-centered heart who has not cut her children up in her lies and deceit. He is a casualty of her actions and blameless. However, it can never change the facts of the harsh reality we found ourselves in. I don't hate him. I feel so sad when I think about how he feels. But all I see when I look at him is the 5 years of my life I was lied to, 5 years of my life I was used, and 5 years of built up doubts and frustration with a woman who used me. There's no putting aside my hatred to try to be in his life, because the life I lived with him was nothing but a facade created by his mother. This is the harsh reality I find myself dealing with, and I simply cannot, in good faith, put myself or him through it anymore. She knows who the father is, so why isn't everyone going after her to search for him? Has everyone gone insane? This is not easy for me. I can't explain to him why am I currently feeling for the disablements of paternity, because she would have me playing child support as a way to continue to be a part of his life. I don't know why she doesn't want to look for his real father. She already told me that she would fight the divorce and would put me on a child support. She is putting in more work fighting me to stay in the marriage than she did when we were married. All she had to do was give me exclusively, and she couldn't even pull that off. Now it's my fault. Now she's claiming I abused her all throughout the marriage. I told her that since I was abusive, then she should do everything she can to keep her children away from me. But no, she wants me to be in his life. My lawyer said that I have a good chance of not paying child support, as he has sent him similar cases in my state. But there's a chance that it doesn't go my way. I don't know. My biggest concern is not money. If it is, I would gladly pay for it, because I still love him, but I don't want his mother to use him against me. It is time for me to move on with my life and start afresh. I have made a colossal mistake, and the time and trauma are something that I could never get back. Well, that's a very sad story, as we all know. Paternity fraud is surprisingly common, and I emphasize with the original poster. I don't know how the establishment of paternity would go, but from my understanding, whether it can be done without the biological father's consent depends on the laws of the specific jurisdiction and the circumstances surrounding the case. Some jurisdictions may allow the establishment of paternity without the biological father's consent under certain conditions, while others may require his consent or involvement. Most states and countries are moving towards prioritizing the welfare of the child at the expense of the legal father, therefore encouraging more paternity frauds. The welfare of the man is not a concern to the state. This is contributing to a high self-deletion rate because men, to the states, are disposable. To them, all men are good for paying taxes and dying in wars. Remember the scene in the Titanic where women and children go first? That's the family court in a nutshell. In the family courts, men are supposed to be accountable for the decisions that they had no part in. I remember a few years ago, I heard on the news that paternity tests were banned in France 15 years ago. If French customs intercept DNA samples or results in the mail, the perpetrator, in theory, risks up to a year in prison and a €15,000 fine. The French Council of States upheld the law, saying it did not want, and I quote, to upset the French regime of affiliation, and that the intent of the law was to preserve, and I quote, the peace of the families. Now, how can there be peace in the family when the wife is busy getting taxed by other men? That's a dystopian society that wants men to accept being cuckolded. And I don't think any man should unwillingly raise a child that is not his. Just like the wife had the choice to cheat, the husband should have the choice to live if the child is not his. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.